So this was really the launch of Honorable Peter Anyang' Nyong'o's book. It's not his first one. He's done books before. The title is Presidential or Parliamentary Democracy in Kenya, Choices to be Made. And he makes a 10-point case for why he believes that the parliamentary system would be a much more democratic and responsive system. Mm-hmm. What's interesting for me in the book, and I'll ask, let me cede some space also to my panelists, he makes a point about proportional representation as well, and that most democracies allow for proportional representation. It's a great book, and I commend the county governor for spending time to do this. I think it's one of the first books that's been written by a county governor while they're in office, which is wonderful.
Right, thank you. Erastus Muncha, also you were there.
I think one of the highlights of yesterday evening was former Prime Minister's, who was guest of honor statement, where speaking extemporaneously, he traced Kenya's history and where the rain started beating us, and how we should also be moving forward. What I'm not sure yet is whether the Kenyans have been convinced about the difference between the parliamentary and the presidential system. I think we have a lot of work to do in this area to continue to explain. Although the virtues have been brought out, one has seen that, to me, and I think this one element that I saw lacking yesterday, stressing the need for institutional framework.
Yes.
Not necessarily a system, because if you have a constitution, but you have, and I think this is a point that Anyang made yesterday, that you don't have constitutionalists running it, then you still run a risk, like what you have seen, what's happening in UK and other places where, you have this strong man mentality or strong woman mentality. Aside from that, I think one of the most important lessons to learn from here is that if you have any system that is based on a constitution, you must have institutions that support it. And those institutions include an independent judiciary, an independent parliament, an independent executive, and also the media. That, I think, is not coming out as strong, although it is in the book, in the discourse that we have.
Right, thank you. Finally, Hashi on this.
I was a protege for Anyang'. I think I still am. He's one of my closest friends. And I think that it's right and proper that he again blazes the trail and sparks a new debate. I commend him for this book. I'm sure it's not going to be the last one, but the substantial point here is the former Prime Minister, who has shot a bow across the MSV Kenya and started the debate about what kind of political system we should have in the coming elections. Whether or not we're going to have a referendum has become another issue, and you cannot have a referendum. You cannot have change the structure without a referendum. And the former Prime Minister has now set the terms of the debate. Professor Anyang' Nyong'o has set the ideological basis for the debate, and I think that this is healthy. This is where what we need to do in this country. We need to debate, and we need to bring out our ideas and see who's got the best idea.
Thank you. All right, before we actually take what is happening, we take a look at what is happening on the international scene. I'll be remiss if we'd also discuss Westgate, because I think the 21st has just passed, and we're observing another anniversary. This is the 6th year since we had this particular incident at Westgate, where so many lives were claimed, and 6 years after Westgate, how attack jolted region police chiefs into action. I don't know what will be your reaction, just a one-liner as far as Westgate is concerned, Irungu Houghton.
So I think obviously it's a moment to pause and reflect. I'm actually present. I was present on Saturday with of 3 points, really. One was, I've just watched, I think it's called Hotel Mumbai, which is the story of the attack. I think there were 12 coordinated attacks in 2008 in Mumbai. And one of them was the very big hotel. Many people lost their lives. I mean, 70 people were killed in that space. And I think the other one, of course, is Dusit this year. which we did see a very well scripted operation to evacuate over 700 people from that space in several hours. And of course, then you've got Westgate. And I think for me, what I remember of Westgate is probably two things. One is the heroes of Westgate, people like Abdul Hajj, Inyat Kasim, Noura Ali, the police officer. Many of those heroes were Muslim. They took action to defend humanity in that moment, and that for me is always a statement about how terrorism is can never be ascribed to a religion or to an ethnic group or a nationality. It has to be treated as it is, which is a fundamentalist, violent ideology that we need to block. And then the second one really is the people who have had to rebuild their lives and the people who lost their lives in that place. And it's the many, many Kenyans that died in those 4 days or so. But also the Ghanaian Kofi Amuno, the poet that happened to be visiting Kenya that time at the Story Moja Festival. So that's what I remember of Westgate.
Right. Dr. Hassan Haninja.
Terrorism only fails when we refuse as a people to be terrorized by them. And I think we've learned plenty from 2013 as government and as Kenya with regard to responding to the terror attacks. Of course, at the beginning of this year, in January, you saw what happened at 14 Riverside Drive. It was tragic, but I think the response was far much better compared to 2013. And even as we talk and reflect on what has been going on, I think it's important that as Kenyans we don't become complacent, because I think we have, as Rui talks about Africans having a very short memory sometimes of tragedy, but sometimes we have very short memory and sometimes we become extremely complacent and we actually do not start watching out. When you're living within a neighborhood, you have something strange, as Americans say, when you see something, say something. Don't wait until it actually happens. And best intelligence does not come from the security services, it actually comes from citizens. And it's not that we're out of the woods. We're not even out of the woods. It's not even about whether terrorist attack will ever happen, but when. Now, the problem is not whether it's going to happen, but how are we prepared to actually respond to it, or at least prevent it from happening in the first place. There are lots of potentially terrorist attacks that are thwarted every day that, of course, Kenyans never really get to hear. And when Kenyans are working in unity and they refuse to be divided, and what we've seen, because ISIS or Al-Shabaab, they thrive in division. They thrive in state failure. They thrive in areas where there is no unity and there is no communication, and these citizens are actually not involved in making sure they take away the only capital they have, which is the people. So I think as we reflect on this, we should be more united and we should share information, because, again, as I just said, the common reference in America is when you see something, please say something. That is what is going to protect all of us.
Right. Maybe the question I would pose to you as well is, in light of this, because we've been grappling with the issue that the UN Security Council has not listed Al-Shabaab as a terror group, as it is. And of course, we saw the tragedy, the macabre killing that really happened at Westgate. Have we improved also in intelligence sharing, across or within the region as a East Africa community?
I think we have improved. Now, of course, there are challenges with regard to listing Al-Shabaab as a terror group, and part of it comes from some of the international community humanitarian organizations that think the listing it may affect their efforts with regard to humanitarian interventions in Somalia. Now, that is a challenge, because it's almost akin to encouraging bad behavior, actually, and it's not something very helpful. We have improved, but of course we have challenges now. Kenya, one of the countries actually on the continent that is most advanced when it comes to now addressing the questions of terrorism and violent extremism. Now, other countries are still trying to catch up. They're still trying to learn. Some are not, they're actually yet to experience, dramatic and violent attacks. Ethiopia just this past week indicated they thwarted a potential major terrorist attack, on its territory. Of course, there were questions which, people were saying, how come Ethiopia, is not under threat, and no, all these countries are vulnerable. And they're increasingly realizing that this threat is not just limited to Kenya. There's nothing so special, that we're the only ones who are going to be victims. No, it's a collective thing. And the sooner the region realizes and acknowledges that, and some countries in the region are actually taking measures towards that. Tanzania is coming in, increasingly, which was kind of a Johnny come lately country in this. It has its own issues, has not just manifested itself on its territory, save for 1998, attack, which of course was again external. But I think there is improvement on a national level, but there need to be also improvement on institutional and internal, for instance, organizations that are actually addressing these efforts. Because when it comes to terrorism, that's the ultimate, that's the end product of it. But in between here, you have radicalization and violent extremism, violent rhetoric. A lot of activities are going on that have to be contained before you actually get there. So I think those efforts should be made robust, and there should be more coordination and programming with regard to CVE.
Kenya and Ethiopia also had a pact, I think way back in 1963, united against Somalia. And the Al-Shabaab has been particularly intent, on making sure, some of the aggressions actually are against Kenya. What do you think? And there was a pact, and maybe they should say, because also I believe we have military on the ground from Ethiopia as well. Erastus Boensha?
First, Barry, I think our thoughts should go to those families that lost their lives on this day. And I know we have family friends who lost their son on this occasion, and the mother has never been the same. So this thing alters people's lives, and it touches really all of us in many ways. It chips our lives away when it happens. It happened also close to my family. When in the bomb blast, we lost a family member there, and I looked at that family. It has never been the same. So this is, a huge challenge, and I think, as Hassan has said, as long as we continue to have socio-economic disparities, unemployment, and the youth purge, and we are not absorbing these people to give them anything to do, we have to be prepared that this kind of thing will continue to haunt us. Now, coming to the issue of even listing Al-Shabaab as a terrorist group, as long as those superpowers, it serves their end, they will not do it. And I think that is the tragedy to us all, because the UN Security Council operates only at a call of the P5, and if any one of them can block the 15 going forward. And in addition to what he said about all this humanitarian assistance, because you can see the effort in trying to blockade Iran. Only one, if one of those decides to move forward, the rest of the world will move on. Now, I think the point that Hassan has also mentioned should be emphasized, and I have been focused on this platform saying the Nyumba Kumi program that we went for should have been better implemented, and I think we should revisit, because much as it was given a security tag, it's still not ideal. We should be able to be collecting information. We have improved from when Westgate happened. The frequency has reduced. I happen to have lived in Ethiopia, and if you live in Ethiopia, you live in a place called Ekebele. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows in that Kebele when you come in, how you come out, the visitors you get. But they go beyond that. They are also looking at issues of environment, health, and that information pops up at the national level any second. In other words, we now live in an information era, and that is a tool that we should be using to be fighting this. But then, I think going beyond that, the pact, Ethiopia is there. Kenya is always going to be put on the back foot, because the Somali had always seen, Kenya had a huge challenge with Somalia as early as in the 1960s. And I think that element is still not yet completely wiped out. And of course, even Ethiopia has had, but the impact on Kenya is something that is not easy to explain.
All right. Ahmed Hashi.
First of all, we're criticize a lot of things, and the reason why we criticize things is or try to show where the gaps are is to help. That's the reason. It's a public service. It's a civic duty. And Debon, I want to thank the intelligence community of Kenya, my favorite group in the system, because I really believe that intelligence is the most important institution that we have today to fight against these terrorists, and they have upped their game. We remember that they were in a very bad state when we were attacked. And Dusit, Debal, you could see the intelligence and the police response and the GSU response was much better than what happened at Westgate and all the other places. So it means that information is intelligence-led, and I really commend the intelligence community for that. And we hardly disagree here because we're very nice people.
Gentlemen.
We're gentlemen, but I'd like to disagree a little bit with my senior. And I'd like to say that this issue of Nyumba Kumi Debal is just, in my opinion, not the way to go for intelligence. I think this Nyumba Kumi thing is a very easy way to subvert our democratic systems, our culture of tolerance, and it's an easy way for your neighbor to spy on you, settle scores with you and things like that. I think that it is a civic duty. You should not have a Nyumba Kumi. That if Ahmed Hashi goes to a neighborhood and sees some skinny guy who's got a gun on his back here and he's got bad intentions, it's my civic duty to go to the police station and say, iko mtu moja hapa hivi mukora kabisa analeta shida. That's my job. But I don't think that Mama Nyambura next door should, be peeping out of a window to see who's coming into the next door. It's not intelligence. It's not a way of doing things. I think that our intelligence service is doing a fantastic job. And I think it's a civic duty of people to go and report any kind of things. But this Nyumba Kumi business, to my learned and experienced senior sitting at the left of me, I humbly disagree with him.
But it has worked in Tanzania, the Nyumba Kumi initiative as well.
Yes.
Because those are police states, Deba. There were police states with one-party rules that did not like. Anybody could go over there and say, Ahmed Hashi, you get into trouble. So I think that we ought to we let the intelligence people and the police people do their job, Deba.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's close it with Professor Anyang, not Professor Anyang, Munoa Midamba.
Dobal, I want to remind you, I want to remind you that Professor Nyong'o is a friend of mine.
Oh, okay. That's
but this is Midamba. Dobal.
That is a polite
Thank you very much.
That's a polite situation. Sorry. I'm having a metal for this.
Yeah. You're too young for that, Dobal. Watergate 2013, Duset 2019.
Westgate.
2013. A huge difference. Westgate was a disaster, absolute disaster. And unfortunately, my friend was in charge at that particular time. We lost it as a country. It was same. We corrected ourselves several years later in 2019. It was a job well done by our security team. Just the way we went to Kismayu, Dobal. We were prepared. We went overwhelmingly, and we scored the point, overwhelming point. And we did the same thing, you said. What I'm afraid of, Dobal, is again the watchdog mentality of waking up and say, oh my God, this cannot happen. And then the next day we forget it. And sustainability is the point, Dobal. That includes you and I. That includes every single person on the street. Hashi may disagree, but the point is Nyumba Kumi work in Scandinavia. Nyumba Kumi work in a number of American cities, work really well. Switzerland and all that. But the point is every Kenyan need to be an instrument and part and parcel of the national security apparatus.
Yeah.
This must not be left to only people on uniform.
Right.